Greetings, and welcome to a story that will challenge everything you thought you knew about aerial combat in the Second World War. Today, we delve into the extraordinary journey of a single American fighter, shot down over France on D-Day. That would become a symbol of technological uncovering and strategic revelation. What if a wrecked P-51 Mustang, lying abandoned in a French field, was not just a battlefield casualty but a gateway into the secrets of American engineering? How did German salvage teams turn a crashed aircraft into a tool to dissect the very heart of Allied airpower? Could a single captured plane reveal the profound advantages of the Mustang's two-stage supercharged engine, its aerodynamic design, and its unmatched operational range? And what did these insights mean when German engineers and pilots faced a machine that outperformed their fighters in speed, height, and endurance? An aircraft they would later study in meticulous detail? Why did the Germans invest vast resources into systematically testing and flying captured Mustangs, examining speeds, climb rates, handling, and performance at high altitude, only to realize that the enemy's aircraft had fundamentally outstripped their own? How did these evaluations expose the stark truth? America's industrial might, technical ingenuity, and strategic planning had created a fighter that redefined aerial warfare. One that the Germans could only observe, analyze, and ultimately accept as superior. In this video, we will trace how the Germans' efforts to understand, replicate, or counter the Mustang's capabilities revealed not just technical details but the very limits of their war effort, highlighting the relentless march of American innovation and the vulnerabilities of the German aerospace industry. We will explore how these captured aircraft, studied at facilities like Rechlin and Göttingen, provided a sobering insight into the technological gap that decided the skies over Europe. And now, the most crucial question: could this relentless pursuit of understanding, through the systematic testing of the enemy's greatest aircraft, have changed the course of the air war? Or was it simply too late to bridge the yawning gap in resources, industry, and experience? Stay tuned as we peel back the layers of secrecy, engineering mastery, and strategic failure, because the story of the Mustang's capture and study begins right now, and it will forever alter your perception of technological superiority in wartime. On a fateful day, the 6th of June, in the year 1944, a scene of chaos and destruction unfolded near the town of Rouen in France. In the turbulent skies above the Normandy beaches, the unmistakable metallic shimmer of a damaged P-51 Mustang flickered as it spiraled downward through a tangle of broken clouds. The aircraft, a formidable fighter, its Merlin engine puffing out a thin trail of smoke, was clearly hurtling toward the ground after a frantic struggle in the air. Lieutenant Thomas Fraser, a seasoned pilot serving with the 434th Fighter Squadron within the renowned 4th Fighter Group, found himself disoriented amidst the turbulence of battle. The relentless chaos had left him momentarily lost his bearings in the fierce aerial combat that characterized the Normandy invasion. His plane, marked with the squadron code QPG and affectionately named Jerry by its crew, was plummeting with overwhelming force into the French countryside. The impact was severe, but Fraser survived the crash landing against long odds. He would spend the vast majority of the remaining war as a prisoner of fierce German forces, but his aircraft, an iconic P-51B-15NA, serial number 43282-5, was about to commence a journey that would challenge the assumptions and overconfidence of some of the Luftwaffe's most accomplished test pilots. Though shattered on impact, the Mustang lay, relatively unscathed in that rural field, waiting to be discovered by German salvage teams who had become experts at locating and recovering American aircraft strewn across occupied Europe. Over succeeding weeks, This particular fighter would be systematically extracted and transported to Rulland, the Luftwaffe's central testing and evaluation facility nestled about 100 kilometers northwest of Berlin, in the region of Mecklenburg. There, it would undergo meticulous repairs using parts salvaged from wrecks scattered across German-controlled territories, scrapped aircraft deemed beyond simple repair but still valuable as sources of information. As the process unfolded, the aircraft's battered fuselage would be painted with German markings, its civilian and American identity obscured, its fuselage bearing the code T9+HK. The underbelly and tail surfaces, now freshly painted in a bright shade of Reichsluftfahrtministerium 4th, RLM-04, yellow, were designed for quick visual identification by German pilots during operations to prevent mistaken engagement. The nose of the aircraft was fitted with a propeller spinner painted in matching yellow, and a distinctive red band encircled the nose of the engine cowling, further aiding recognition. In accordance with standard procedures for captured enemy aircraft, this Mustang would eventually be assigned to one of the Luftwaffe's most curious and specialized units, what came to be known as the Wonder Zirkus Rosarius. This enigmatic unit conducted tests and evaluations on enemy aircraft that had been recovered, with the purpose of gleaning insights into American engineering ingenuity, industrial robustness, and the tactical realities faced by the air forces during the forlorn days of the conflict. To the German pilots, many of whom encountered these aircraft in mock dogfights or technical reviews, the captured Mustangs represented a stark, often uncomfortable reality. The technological edge once held by Germany was eroding, and the Allies' aircraft design and manufacturing capabilities were proving formidable indeed. The story of how the Kriegsmarine's air forces began transforming the capture of enemy aircraft into a revealing intellectual and technological resource does not originate merely from Fraser's forced landing during the invasion, but is rooted in the broader context of an escalating aerial conflict over Europe. By the middle of 1943, the Luftwaffe was facing a critical strategic dilemma. On one hand, the skill, courage, and resourcefulness of its pilots kept defenses afloat. On the other, the rapid development and deployment of increasingly sophisticated Allied aircraft threatened to outpace German capabilities. The American bomber fleets, especially the formidable formations of heavy bombers, penetrated deeper into German territory with each passing month. These formations were shielded by fighters, whose true combat effectiveness remained, to certain extents, shrouded in mystery due to incomplete intelligence. German military leaders and tacticians relied heavily on reconnaissance, pilot reports, and technical evaluations to piece together a clear picture of Allied aerial strength. However, those reports were often fragmentary, inconsistent, or incomplete, leaving gaps in crucial information. It was within this environment of uncertainty and urgency that the Luftwaffe turned to innovative methods for intelligence gathering, chief among them the systematic examination of actual captured enemy aircraft, which provided invaluable insights unreachable through traditional reconnaissance or debriefs alone. During the course of the war, reports describing the performance of enemy aircraft emerged from various sources, yet they often conflicted with each other, creating a confusing mosaic rather than clear, consistent data. These accounts frequently reflected the chaos and unpredictability inherent in aerial combat rather than providing systematic, controlled analyses conducted under uniform conditions. Recognizing this flaw, Hetman Theodor Rosarius, a highly experienced officer of the Luftwaffe, understood that Germany's fighter units could not rely solely on such scattered combat reports and second-hand anecdotes to develop an effective strategy against the increasingly formidable Allied air forces. Instead, they required direct, first-hand experience with the captured enemy aircraft, coupled with deliberate and structured experimentation. Such an approach involved providing pilots with opportunities to fly these captured machines in controlled environments, enabling systematic observation and testing to uncover both their strengths and vulnerabilities through direct engagement and rigorous analysis. This methodology was not an entirely novel concept. Both the Allies and the Germans had explored the value of examining captured aircraft throughout the war. However, Rosarius envisioned and implemented a refined, systematic approach that would maximize the tactical utility of these evaluations. In the year 1943, under the orders of General Adolf Galland, Rosarius was tasked with establishing a dedicated unit, one that would evolve into what became known as the Wonder Zirkus Rosarius. Officially, this unit was designated as the second staff of the Versuchende Oberkommando der Luftwaffe, a specialized branch responsible for aircraft testing and research within the Luftwaffe's High Command. This specialized unit received all repairable Allied aircraft that German salvage teams recovered from downed aircraft across occupied Europe, disciplines stretching from France and Italy to the Eastern Front. The unit's mission extended far beyond static, laboratory-based evaluations. Rosarius organized mobile demonstrations where captured aircraft were ferried to various operational Luftwaffe fighter bases throughout Germany and occupied territories. These visits were designed to give frontline pilots the unprecedented opportunity to examine enemy aircraft in detail, seeing their construction, operational features, and performance characteristics close up. To enhance understanding, the program included aerial demonstrations and, in carefully selected cases, actual mock combat flights against these captured planes, allowing pilots to assess their capabilities under realistic conditions. This initiative directly addressed a core problem in pilot training that had grown increasingly critical as the war neared its conclusion. German pilots typically trained against their own aircraft, mastering tactics optimized for battling enemies equipped with similar aviation technology and employing doctrines rooted in shared training. While effective against consistent opponents, this approach created a dangerous blind spot when confronting Allied pilots flying vastly different aircraft, machines distinguished by superior range, high-altitude performance, or sustained speeds, along with tactical doctrines crafted to exploit these specific advantages. The English and American Air Forces had evolved operational tactics that leveraged their aircraft's unique strengths, which German pilots lacked familiarity with, making encounters with Allied fighters potentially decisive. By 1944, the Germans had developed a highly efficient system for recovering and evaluating Allied aircraft wreckage. Specialized salvage units operated across occupied territories under the command of Belgian Battalion, or salvage battalions. These teams worked with remarkable speed and coordination to locate crash sites, assess the extent of damage, and transport aircraft that could be repaired back to centralized testing and repair facilities before the advancing Allied forces could recapture the sites. Through these efforts, they collected valuable technical intelligence, adding further depth to their understanding of the enemy's aeronautical technology and tactics. The organization of the German Air Forces, epitomized by the Rex model, exemplified a level of meticulous planning and disciplined structure that continued to impress despite growing shortages of crucial resources. Their operational framework was underpinned by a commitment to precision and efficiency, which often proved to be a decisive advantage even as supplies dwindled. This organizational rigor was evident across every facet of their military logistics and command, facilitating sustained effort in an increasingly resource-constrained environment. Meanwhile, the vast scale of Allied air operations over continental Europe rendered inevitable a high rate of aircraft losses, an unavoidable consequence of the relentless intensity and volume of sorties flown each month by both American and British air forces. In a matter of millions of sorties, mechanical failures, battle damage, navigational mistakes, fuel exhaustion, and adverse weather conditions collectively resulted in numerous forced landings behind enemy lines. These incidents, while tragic, were an intrinsic part of the air war's relentless grind. Importantly, not every aircraft that was forced down was destroyed upon impact, nor were all rendered beyond repair. Some pilots, upon recognizing that further flight was impossible and that the situation was hopeless, skillfully executed controlled crash landings. Such pilots aimed to minimize damage to their aircraft, sometimes leaving their machines relatively intact, sometimes with only minor structural issues that technicians could feasibly repair given the available tools, parts, and expertise. One notable example of this was Fraser's P-51 Mustang, designated B-15NA, which fell into this category of recoverable aircraft. During the fierce fighter sweeps supporting the D-Day invasion, the aircraft suffered substantial damage, forcing its pilot to perform an emergency landing within terrain still under German control. The pilot's skillful maneuvering during the crash ensured the aircraft remained largely intact rather than rendered beyond repair. Within hours, German recovery teams arrived at the crash site, following their well-established procedures for such incidents. Their experts carefully scrutinized the fallen Mustang, assessing the damage and determining whether the aircraft could be salvaged and restored to operational condition. Despite the crash injury and battle wear, they concluded that the airframe could indeed be repaired, its structure largely intact enough to warrant removal and subsequent refurbishment. The aircraft was then meticulously loaded onto specialized transport equipment and swiftly sent to Recklen, a prominent German aircraft testing and repair facility. This site, located near Lake Maritz, served as the Luftwaffe's primary hub for evaluating new German aircraft designs and conducting in-depth assessments of captured enemy types, including extensive repair and reverse engineering work. Recklen's specialized workshops were equipped with an array of advanced tools and diagnostic devices that supported both testing and repairs. The facility boasted comprehensive test ranges, covering everything from durability assessments to aerodynamics, and runways designed explicitly for conduct of evaluation flights under strictly controlled conditions. Despite the lack of original technical manuals, factory specifications, and spare parts made to precise tolerances, German technicians demonstrated remarkable ingenuity and adaptability when restoring Allied aircraft. Their skill in reverse engineering parts and improvising repairs was considerable, especially given the limited resources at hand. They would often cannibalize components from other crashed P-51 Mustangs recovered across Europe, meticulously matching and fitting parts from damaged aircraft to assemble a single airworthy machine. Among the critical components in Fraser's Mustang was the Packard-built version of the legendary Rolls-Royce Merlin 63 engine, the so-called Merlin 816503. This engine, a license-built adaptation, featured a sophisticated two-stage, two-speed supercharger. It was capable of producing approximately 1,490 horsepower at an altitude of about 13,750 feet, utilizing a boost pressure of 61 inches of mercury to optimize power and performance. The aircraft in question had undergone a comprehensive and meticulous inspection process, during which all necessary repairs were carried out with precision. To ensure optimal operation and safety, replacement parts were sourced from multiple, often diverse, suppliers, reflecting the complex logistics involved in maintaining such a sophisticated machine. This particular engine stood out as a remarkable technological achievement of its time, primarily because it could generate significantly more power at high altitudes than conventional single-stage supercharged engines. Its secret lay in an advanced, intercooled, two-stage supercharger system, which allowed it to perform efficiently in the thin air higher above the ground, thus granting the aircraft a notable advantage in high-altitude combat scenarios. In addition to engine modifications, the aircraft's armament, a pair of 450 caliber Browning M2 machine guns mounted on each wing in the original P-51B configuration, were removed entirely. The reason for this removal was not due to functional failure but because of strict German regulations governing the handling of captured military equipment. Instead of combat-ready armament, these weapon slots were filled with ballast weights, ensuring that the aircraft's weight distribution and center of gravity remained balanced. Such measures were necessary because German authorities were highly cautious about the potential use of captured aircraft. They feared that any unforeseen mishap or defect might cause these planes to fall into Allied hands once again, or that they could be exploited in some manner if used against German forces. These restrictions served both safety concerns and strategic caution. The control surfaces, namely the ailerons, elevator, and rudder, were thoroughly examined to verify their structural integrity and correct operational response, guaranteeing they would function reliably during flight. The hydraulic systems underwent rigorous pressure testing, with careful inspections for any leaks or weaknesses that could lead to malfunction under stress. The aircraft's fuel tanks also received detailed scrutiny to check for damage, cracks, or potential leak points that could pose risks of catastrophic failure mid-flight, which could be disastrous during combat or test flights. The carefully preserved Razorback canopy, a distinctive feature of the P-51B, was repaired and cleaned with great attention. However, military pilots from the Axis forces later noted that the framed canopy design limited rearward visibility, especially when compared to the later P-51D's more modern, bubble-style canopy, which offered unimpeded view in all directions. After weeks of unwavering dedication and labor by skilled mechanics and technicians, working often under constraints, with limited resources, and utilizing improvised solutions, the aircraft was declared ready for its first series of test flights. German test pilots prepared with a mix of professional curiosity and a healthy dose of skepticism, a reflex born from years of Luftwaffe propaganda portraying American aircraft as largely crude, mass-produced, and focused predominantly on quantity rather than quality. The prevailing official narrative depicted American aircraft as utilitarian tools designed to replace German aircraft production rather than as engineering marvels. These propaganda campaigns emphasized ease of manufacturing, simplicity, and affordability over sophisticated engineering, hoping to diminish their perceived technological edge. Accordingly, many German pilots held the firm belief that American aircraft were only good enough to produce large numbers quickly, rather than exhibiting the levels of refinement, engineering excellence, and performance that typified top German designs such as the Focke-Wulf FW-190 or the Messerschmitt Bf-109. This perception was soon shattered the moment experienced German test pilots boarded the Mustang's cockpit and experienced firsthand what American designers and engineers had accomplished through meticulous craftsmanship, innovative engineering, and rigorous attention to both operational details and pilot ergonomics. The initial impression was striking. The cockpit of the P-51B contrasted sharply with the cramped confines of the Messerschmitt Bf-109 and even the relatively more spacious cockpits of the Focke-Wulf FW-190. It demonstrated thoughtful ergonomic design, with controls arranged logically and positioned within easy reach, significantly reducing pilot workload and minimizing unnecessary movement. Such attention to ergonomic details reflected a clear understanding of pilot needs, a fundamental aspect often overlooked by mass production aircraft. The open, well-organized cockpit offered a sense of space and comfort that was unlike the more utilitarian German fighters, providing the pilot with a heightened sense of control, confidence, and readiness for combat situations. Focusing predominantly on tactical situations rather than grappling with the intricacies of aircraft systems, pilots could dedicate their full attention to strategic and combat considerations. The aircraft's instrumentation was thoughtfully designed, featuring gauges that were prominently marked and effortlessly legible, and these instruments were logically clustered by function. An approach rooted firmly in human factors engineering aimed at maximizing pilot efficiency and reducing cognitive load during intense scenarios. The cockpit seating provided markedly superior comfort compared to that of contemporary German fighters, a significant advantage, especially during long-duration missions where pilot fatigue could dramatically impair judgment and operational effectiveness. Visibility from the cockpit was notably superior, even in the initial Razorback version that employed a more traditional, framed canopy design. This improvement meant pilots had unobstructed sightlines that surpassed those of the Bf-109, which suffered from heavily framed canopies, restricted forward visibility, and particularly poor rearward sightlines, an Achilles heel that often left German pilots vulnerable to attackers sneaking up from behind. Yet, the most astonishing revelation came when German test pilots engaged the throttle, activating the mighty Packard Merlin engine, specifically the model 516503, which responded smoothly and with increasing power in a manner that seemed almost seamless. The engine's power, building steadily and predictably, allowed the aircraft to gain speed rapidly as it sped down Recklin's airfield runway. The four-bladed Hamilton standard propeller efficiently translated that power into forward thrust, biting through the air with remarkable force. The takeoff roll was surprisingly brief for an aircraft of the Mustang's weight and size, indicating a high power-to-weight ratio and exemplary aerodynamic design. This combination was a clear demonstration of the engine's formidable output and the plane's streamlined structure, which effectively minimized drag across the entire speed spectrum. Once airborne, the Mustang revealed handling qualities that fundamentally challenged German pilots' existing perceptions, both about American aircraft design principles and about the capabilities of the engineering behind the machine. The flight controls showed an impressive degree of harmony, with ailerons, elevators, and rudders providing perfectly balanced forces across all speeds, from approach velocity to maximum speed. These controls offered predictable feedback, increasing in force with acceleration to give pilots a tactile sense of aircraft behavior, but remaining manageable without becoming overly heavy. At lower speeds, control inputs eased smoothly, preventing the aircraft from feeling twitchy or overly sensitive, factors that are vital in ensuring pilot confidence and safe maneuvering. Responding with crispness and predictability to every input, the Mustang did not exhibit the oversensitivity or nervous handling quirks that haunted some fighter aircraft of the era. Its roll rate notably outperformed that of the Bf-109 and approached the exceptional agility seen in the FW-190, enabling swift and precise directional changes, a crucial advantage for both offensive strike maneuvers and defensive evasion tactics during combat. The plane could be pushed aggressively into tight turns and complex maneuvers without showing any alarming tendencies toward departure from controlled flight, such as entering unintended spins or losing stability, which could prove fatal in actual combat engagement. German test pilots undertook systematic evaluations to delineate the full scope of the Mustang's performance envelope. They conducted carefully structured test flights that pushed the aircraft through a series of standardized maneuvers, designed meticulously to expose its strengths, limitations, and any hidden vulnerabilities or dangerous tendencies. Of particular interest was the aircraft's climb performance, they were consistently highly impressed. The P-51B model, in particular, maintained excellent climb rates up to altitudes well beyond initial expectations, raising significant tactical considerations for its potential engagement and mission profile. In sum, the Mustang proved to be an aerodynamically refined, powerfully armed, and pilot-friendly aircraft that redefined fighter engagement capabilities during the war. Its agility, speed, and climb efficiency combined to make it a formidable opponent, capable of dominating adverse recesses of the sky that had previously been challenging for other fighters to conquer. Rising to an altitude of 30,000 feet, the two-stage supercharged Merlin engine onboard the P-51 Mustang sustained impressive levels of power, even as the surrounding atmosphere grew increasingly thin and cold. In stark contrast, many German fighters equipped with the older, single-stage superchargers experienced severe performance degradation under the same conditions. This altitude presented a critical challenge and a strategic concern for German pilots and commanders alike. Because American bomber formations frequently operated within this altitude range, typically spanning between 25,000 and 30,000 feet, the limited oxygen and chill in the air posed a significant operational threat. While at these heights, bomber defenses remained potent against attacking fighters, which needed to slow down to effectively attack, German aircraft with single-stage superchargers struggled to maintain sufficient power as they ascended into thinner air. Meanwhile, the Mustang's advanced two-stage Merlin engine continued to generate robust, dependable thrust, granting it a distinct advantage in navigating these high-altitude environments. This performance differential profoundly impacted tactical considerations. The knowledge that the Mustang could not only escort American bombers successfully up to and beyond these altitudes but could also excel in combat at such heights was a sobering realization for German pilots and military strategists. The Mustang's ability to sustain high speeds and quick maneuvers was crucial. As the enemy fighters' engines lost power and their handling deteriorated in the rarefied air, the Mustang's superior engine design allowed it to retain agility and speed. Consequently, these factors decisively tilted the balance of aerial combat in favor of the Allies, especially at strategic altitudes where the Germans' single-stage supercharged fighters faltered. Controlled speed trials, conducted under standardized conditions across various altitudes, reaffirmed the Mustang's dominant status in terms of velocity. At optimal service ceiling conditions, the P-51B version could reach approximately 440 miles per hour, outperforming its German counterparts significantly. The Messerschmitt Bf 109G, for example, had a top speed near 386 miles per hour, while the Focke-Wulf FW 190A version peaked around a mere 48 miles per hour less, under comparable operating circumstances. This clear and substantial speed advantage had far-reaching tactical implications. It enabled Mustang pilots to dictate the terms of engagement. They could choose to attack fleeing enemy fighters, capitalizing on their speed and agility, or to disengage swiftly when the situation was unfavorable. German fighters, lacking the same speed advantage at these altitudes, often found themselves unable to pursue effectively or to mount a sustained offensive against the Mustang. German pilots quickly learned that they could not force their way into a gunfight with a Mustang pilot who was aware of the mismatch and chose to evade. This realization undermined German tactical flexibility, forcing them into a defensive posture or to attempt risky interception maneuvers that could easily backfire. The design of the P-51's wing played a significant role in its exceptional performance. Based on NACA, National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, laminar flow airfoil sections, the wings contributed both to its distinctive sleek appearance and to its aerodynamic efficiency. While German engineers observed that achieving true laminar flow in practical operational conditions was difficult, owing to manufacturing tolerances, surface imperfections, rivets, paint, and normal wear, the benefits of the design remained evident. The wings generated a remarkable amount of lift while producing minimal drag, giving the Mustang a significant edge in range and fuel economy. This aerodynamic innovation allowed the P-51 to maintain high performance over an unexpectedly broad speed spectrum. It delivered solid low-speed handling characteristics suitable for landing and takeoff, while also maintaining impressive high-speed capabilities during combat maneuvers. Circumstances such as escort missions, dogfighting, and high-altitude intercepts all benefited from the efficient wing design. The aircraft's exceptional range, coupled with its ability to operate confidently at various speeds and altitudes, made the Mustang a formidable and versatile weapon in the Allied arsenal, fundamentally altering the air war landscape. The high-speed handling characteristics of the P-51 Mustang during combat maneuvering were revolutionary, providing pilots with a level of reliability and predictability that greatly reduced their workload in the heat of battle. This stability not only eased the physical demands placed on pilots but also enhanced their overall combat effectiveness by allowing more precise and confident control during critical moments in combat. Designed with meticulous attention to aerodynamic refinement, the Mustang could execute rapid maneuvers without the unsettling tendencies that plagued many contemporary fighters when pushed close to their maximum speed thresholds. One of the most notable aspects of the Mustang's performance was its exceptional capability during steep, high-velocity dives. When diving at very high speeds, the aircraft maintained smooth, responsive handling without experiencing the severe control stiffening issues that typically hampered other fighters at similar velocities. This meant that pilots could confidently pull out of a steep descent with minimal physical strain, avoiding the dangerous loss of control or the need for excessive physical effort often required in less advanced aircraft. The aircraft's airframe remained remarkably stable throughout such maneuvers, free from flutter, buffeting, or structural compromise. German test pilots, well aware of the importance of diving as a primary tactical element in their doctrine, observed this feature with a mix of professional interest and strategic concern. Since German tactics often relied on attacking enemy bombers from high altitude to gain speed and control, the ability of the Mustang to withstand and recover from high-speed dives significantly undermined this advantage, presenting a new tactical challenge for German fighters. In the realm of dive performance, the Mustang clearly demonstrated superiority compared to the German fighters it faced. Its ability to follow enemy aircraft through high-speed dives, maintaining tight control without flutter or structural issues, removed a critical advantage that German fighters previously exploited. When examining turn performance, the operational picture grew more complex. Although the Mustang could not outperform the German Messerschmitt Bf 109 in sustained, moderate speed level turns, primarily because the Bf 109 was equipped with automatic leading edge slats that deployed during high angle of attack, delaying wing stall and enabling tighter, quicker turns, the aircraft still held significant tactical advantages elsewhere. In engagements involving slower, sustained turns at medium altitudes, the lighter, more compact Bf 109 exhibited a clear superiority in turn radius and turn rate due to its lighter weight and inherently more maneuverable design. However, experienced German pilots, through rigorous testing and simulated combat scenarios, discovered that the Mustang's inherent strengths in speed and climb rate allowed highly skilled pilots to avoid prolonged turning combat altogether. Instead, they could adopt energy tactics, leveraging superior acceleration and altitude gain, by converting their speed into potential energy. then using this energy advantage to control engagements, escape unfavorable positions, or reposition strategically. This ability to effectively trade speed for altitude and vice versa was key, enabling Mustang pilots to maintain a dominant energy state throughout combat. They could engage when conditions proved advantageous and quickly disengage when facing threats, forcing the enemy to operate on unfavorable terms compressed within the enemy's preferred combat geometry. Such tactical flexibility made the Mustang not just a fast fighter but a strategic tool, capable of dictating the terms of engagement rather than being forced into disadvantageous turning battles dictated by the enemy's agility. The robust construction and structural integrity of the P-51 Mustang also garnered high praise from German engineers who examined the aircraft in detail during systematic evaluations conducted at both Rechlingen and Göttingen. The sophisticated yet sturdy design incorporated substantial safety margins into critical structural components across the entire airframe. This ensured that the Mustang could sustain considerable battle damage that would generally prove fatal to lighter, more delicately constructed German aircraft, without catastrophic failure. This approach to durability was a stark contrast to many German aircraft of the era, which often prioritized minimizing weight to push the limits of performance. The German engineering philosophy frequently pushed structural elements toward their absolute minimums, sacrificing a margin of safety to reduce weight and boost speed. In contrast, the P-51's sturdy construction provided a level of resilience that allowed it to recover from heavy hits, improve survivability, and sustain operational effectiveness even under intense combat conditions. These qualities meant that the Mustang could absorb damage and continue fighting, a vital trait in prolonged engagements and attrition scenarios, ultimately contributing to its reputation as a highly durable and reliable fighter in the skies over Europe. During combat situations where aircraft faced perilous conditions, numerous Allied fighters, including the formidable P-51 Mustang, demonstrated an impressive resilience by maintaining their operational integrity and returning safely to their bases. This remarkable ability to survive encounters, sustain essential systems, and ultimately reach shelter was not merely a matter of luck but stemmed from carefully prioritized design philosophies focused explicitly on pilot survivability and aircraft durability. Such an approach meant that, in exchange for accepting a somewhat increased weight when empty, thus slightly reducing overall maneuverability, the aircraft were built to endure the rigors of combat longer and to withstand damage that might incapacitate less robust models. As a result, this increased durability directly contributed to higher survival rates among pilots while ensuring aircraft availability, thereby enabling continued combat effectiveness in subsequent sorties. The engineering principles guiding American aircraft design were profoundly oriented toward survivability and maintainability. This strategy recognized that the longevity of aircraft in the theater of war and the safety of their crews depended largely on robust construction and accessibility for repairs. The Americans were willing to accept the penalty of adding extra weight, understanding that the trade-off, greater overall durability, would lead to a longer operational lifespan for each aircraft in active service. This philosophy bore fruitful results, especially in the context of long, grueling missions over enemy territory. In stark contrast to their East Front counterparts, German pilots were often surprised and even astonished by the impressive range capabilities provided by the P-51B Mustang. This aircraft could carry significantly more internal fuel than their standard fighters, such as the Bf-109 and Fw-190, thanks to an aerodynamically optimized wing structure that minimized drag and maximized fuel efficiency. This design permitted German pilots, who traditionally faced fighters with limited endurance, rarely exceeding an hour of continuous flight, including combat, to encounter an aircraft capable of flying far beyond those constraints. To put it into perspective, the Mustang's internal fuel capacity translated into an operational range that was truly extraordinary, making the aircraft appear almost unbelievable to the German fighters accustomed to much shorter missions. Moreover, when external drop tanks were mounted beneath the wings, the Mustang could undertake extended sorties lasting in excess of 8 hours. These missions allowed Allied forces to cover vast distances, far beyond what German pilots considered feasible, effectively enabling fighters to escort bombers across entire operational theaters, from England deep into the heart of Germany and back again. To give a clearer picture, the German combat radius, what they could realistically achieve before needing to return to base, barely approached 200 miles under optimal conditions, making the Mustang's extended range an essential game-changer in the conduct of aerial warfare. This monumental increase in operational range fundamentally altered bomber escort tactics, creating a strategically decisive advantage for the Allies. Early in the war, German fighters exploited the limited range of their adversaries' escorts by waiting until the shorter-range Allied fighters, such as the early P-47 or P-38 models, ran low on fuel and had to retreat towards their bases. During this window, they would then attack unprotected bombers, vulnerable targets, deep inside German-controlled territory, increasing their chances of basari and strategic success. However, the advent of the Mustang's exceptional range effectively closed this tactical vulnerability. With the P-51, American escorts could accompany bombers throughout entire missions, across the expansive width of German airspace and back, rather than turning away at environmental or fuel constraints. This meant German fighters could no longer target bombers when they were most vulnerable, as they were now protected by nearly continuous escort coverage. The strategic implications of this shift were both profound and deeply troubling for Luftwaffe commanders. They understood undoubtedly that German fighters could no longer rely on short-range intercepts, and instead had to engage in direct, often costlier, and more dangerous confrontations against well-protected formations originating deep within enemy territory. For German pilots, every interception became increasingly perilous, as their chances of reaching the bombers were diminished by the prolonged escort coverage, making each sortie a dangerous endeavor fraught with heightened risk. Perhaps most notably from a human and operational perspective, Luftwaffe pilots who had opportunities to fly captured Mustang aircraft and participate in both test flights and mock aerial combat sessions consistently reported being deeply impressed with the machine's handling and overall ease of operation. They found that the aircraft's flight controls required neither excessive strength nor overly delicate finesse, making it accessible even to pilots less experienced or physically less capable. This balanced harmony of handling traits allowed pilots to move confidently, executing aggressive and precise maneuvers without the fear of over-controlling the aircraft or unwittingly losing control during violent or complex aerial tactics. This generous forgivingness in handling characteristics meant that the average pilot, armed with ordinary skills, could draw respectable performance from the Mustang under most combat conditions, while highly skilled or exceptional pilots could fully exploit its advanced capabilities to achieve remarkable feats. The maintenance process for the Mustang also greatly impressed German ground crews who, based on their experiences with the often demanding servicing requirements of aircraft like the Bf-109 and Fw-190, expected similar complexities. To their delight, aircraft, notably the well-known Mustang, were brought into practical demonstrations designed not only to showcase their capabilities but also to serve as potent tools for psychological impact. These aircraft, once captured and carefully restored, were presented to German pilots and ground crews during extensive touring campaigns across numerous Luftwaffe fighter bases scattered throughout Germany in late 1944. The purpose was clear: to give German personnel a first-hand look at the formidable enemy aircraft and teach them tactical procedures to counter these threats effectively. During each visit, the operational units that hosted these exhibitions would establish temporary command posts that featured detailed demonstrations of the aircraft's raw performance and handling characteristics. These were meticulously arranged to reveal the capabilities of the Allied fighters, notably including the Mustang, in ways that black and white reports or verbal debriefings simply could not convey. The goal was to immerse the German pilots and ground crews immediately and vividly in the realities of the enemy technology they would sooner or later encounter in combat. The process began with scenarios designed to strengthen the psychological impact. The captured aircraft, bearing vividly painted markings or authentic camouflage, would gradually taxi past gathered German personnel, pilots, technicians, and officers, in formations that appeared almost surreal. This spectacle of enemy aircraft moving under their own power among German fighters, sometimes painted in striking shades of yellow or other distinctive hues, made the threat feel very real. Such close-up visual encounters helped diminish the sense that these Allies' machines were merely figures in reports and instead turned them into tangible, almost magical entities that could be studied and feared. Following this initial visual impression, the demonstrations moved into actual flight routines. Skilled German test pilots, many with extensive experience in flying their own fighters, would take control of the captured aircraft. These pilots performed a series of meticulously choreographed aerobatic maneuvers and tactical display flights, designed to highlight specific technical strengths and flight characteristics. These flights served not only as entertainment but as valuable education, revealing features such as high speed, climb rate, maneuverability, and agility, elements critical to understanding how these aircraft could be effectively employed against German fighters. For instance, the demonstration would often start with the Mustang and other Allied fighters executing high-speed passes at low altitude, massive displays of the aircraft's outstanding speed advantage over German fighters operating in similar conditions. These passes made it visually obvious that the Allies had a technological edge, and they quickly sent a message that German fighters would need exceptional tactics to counter in combat. Next, pilots would perform steep climbs to altitudes surpassing 30,000 feet, vividly illustrating the Mustang's powerful two-stage supercharged engine's capacity for impressive high-altitude performance. These climbs demonstrated how Allied aircraft could attain and sustain operational heights that often challenged or surpassed the German fighters' own abilities. In addition to high-speed and climb demonstrations, the pilots would execute precise roll maneuvers, such as crisp aileron rolls, that showcased the exceptional agility and responsiveness of the aircraft. These aerobatic routines highlighted the potential for rapid directional changes, an effect highly valued in dogfighting scenarios. To further emphasize offensive and defensive capabilities, mock dogfights would be staged, pitting the captured aircraft against German fighters in simulated combat. These staged combats illustrated both the impressive strengths of the Allied fighters, like high speed and agility, and the specific tactical circumstances where German aircraft could still hold an advantage, such as in certain angles of approach or engagement ranges. After the flight demonstrations concluded, the aircraft would settle onto the ground, where the real educational exchange occurred. German pilots, technicians, and ground personnel had the opportunity to approach the aircraft directly, examining every aspect of its design in detail. They could peer inside the cockpit, scrutinize the layout of the instrument panel, and even ask the test pilots about their handling, tactical use, and performance experiences with the aircraft. These hands-on sessions played a crucial role in breaking down the aircraft's mysteries, transforming it from an abstract, enemy machine into a comprehensible and tangible adversary, one that German pilots could study, learn from, and incorporate into their tactical planning. Among the various components of these extensive demonstrations, perhaps the most psychologically influential were the mock combat sessions. During these engaged stages, the painted and restored aircraft, particularly the Mustang, would engage in simulated dogfights against German fighters, providing a vivid demonstration of the firepower, speed, and operational advantages that the Allies had against the German Luftwaffe. These sessions were carefully choreographed to emphasize the relative strengths and weaknesses of both sides, offering German pilots an experiential understanding of how British, American, or other Allied fighters could gain and sustain tactical advantages in real situations. In essence, these tours and demonstrations went beyond simply displaying the technical prowess of the Allied aircraft. They aimed squarely at convincing enemy personnel of the sheer superiority and technological advancement of their machines and tactics. By doing so, the Luftwaffe personnel gained valuable insights into the enemy's capabilities, which could inform their future engagements, while also seeking to erode morale and the psychological unity of German pilots facing the formidable lineup of Allied fighters, most notably the mighty Mustang with its unmatched speed during late 1944. Amidst the escalating intensity of Allied bomber operations and the increasing losses suffered by German forces, a series of rigorous and highly controlled aerial combat exercises were organized. These exercises involved engaging German fighter pilots in simulated combat scenarios designed to closely mimic real dogfights, with the key difference being that the engagements were carefully supervised and observed by trained military personnel. The core idea was to provide select experienced German pilots with first-hand experience against the captured Allied aircraft, most notably the P-51 Mustang, by flying their own operational fighters and engaging in mock battles against these captured types. The aim of these exercises was not merely academic. They were intended to give German pilots practical, on-the-spot understanding of how Allied fighters performed under various combat conditions. Lessons from these mock encounters could then be transmitted to their comrades back in Germany, promising to improve tactics and possibly enhance the effectiveness of their own fighters in actual combat. During such a demonstration, which took place at a Luftwaffe airfield hosting a Luftlot identified as Jagdschade 1, a notable event unfolded that highlighted the stark realities of aerial combat at this stage of the war. In this particular session, some of the most experienced German pilots were tasked with flying their standard-issue aircraft, including the formidable Messerschmitt Bf-109G and the Focke-Wulf FW-190, against the fearsome American P-51 Mustangs. A skilled German test pilot was also involved, flying the Mustang himself to demonstrate the tactics that American pilots habitually employed in combat. By doing so, he showcased how the Mustang's key advantages, primarily its exceptional speed and climb capability, could be exploited during an engagement to maintain a superior energy state and avoid becoming disadvantaged during close in-turning fights. Meanwhile, the German pilots tackled their encounters with the captured Mustang using strategies that had previously proved successful against earlier Allied fighters. These tactical approaches, learned from past combat experiences, largely relied on the assumption that superior turn performance or tried-and-true Luftwaffe combat doctrines could be effective against the Mustang. However, reality quickly proved otherwise. As the mock battles unfolded, it became painfully evident that the Mustang pilot, fully aware of the aircraft's strengths, could efficiently use energy management techniques. The Mustang's exceptional speed and acceleration allowed him to either outrun pursuers or outclimb them, rendering traditional German tactics increasingly ineffective. In scenarios where the German fighters pressed forward aggressively, trying to keep the Mustang engaged in a turning dogfight, the Mustang would often simply accelerate away, increasing the gap faster than the Germans could close it. Conversely, attempts to climb above the Mustang with the goal of attacking from above, aiming for an advantageous diving attack, met with the Mustang's superior climb rate, which allowed it to reach higher altitudes first. This reversibility of tactical initiatives underscored the Mustang's capacity to control the key variable in aerial combat, energy. Furthermore, when German pilots endeavored to force a turning fight, where their aircraft's higher maneuverability theoretically should have presented an advantage, the Mustang pilot, aware of these dynamics, would typically avoid a direct engagement. Instead, he would extend away at high speed, then draw the Germans into a different phase of the fight when the conditions suited an energetic attack. This strategic avoidance and re-engagement highlighted how the Mustang's design and the American pilots' tactical awareness played pivotal roles in their aerial superiority. The results of these simulated dogfights served as a sobering revelation for the German pilots. Many had entered these exercises believing that their aircraft, coupled with known tactics, still kept them competitively matched with Allied fighters. But witnessing firsthand the Mustang's dynamic performance and understanding how it could systematically outmaneuver and outpace the German fighters freshened the stark reality that their aircraft and tactics, at best, might only hold a parallel standing at certain altitudes or specific situations. The demonstration underscored with great clarity that American pilots flying the P-51 possessed significant tactical and performance advantages. These gains were especially evident in high-altitude operations, crucial during bomber escort missions, where the Mustang's capabilities excelled and gave Allied forces a decisive edge. This pattern of harsh realization was not confined to a single demonstration but unfolded repeatedly across numerous Luftwaffe bases, where the Wonder Zirkus Rosarius, likely a code name or a particular reconnaissance or demonstration initiative, conducted similar displays of aircraft performance from late in the war timeline through the early months of the following year. Throughout these events, German pilots consistently received official assurances, perhaps from their superiors or propaganda sources, that their aircraft remained at least on equal footing with Allied fighters or that technological and tactical parity could be maintained. Nevertheless, the stark, unfiltered experience of engaging the Mustang in controlled mock combats sharply highlighted the gap between official narrative and actual operational capability. In conclusion, these exercises served as a wake-up call, revealing the profound disparities rooted in aircraft design, performance, and pilot tactics, confirming that the P-51 Mustang had established itself as a predominant force in the skies, particularly at the high altitudes beloved of bomber to equip the remaining German pilots with a more accurate understanding of their adversaries' strengths and tactics. But these insights proved insufficient in counteracting the deteriorating strategic position of the Luftwaffe. The ability of German fighters to exploit their limited advantages waned as Allied technological and numerical superiority continued to grow. Throughout the turbulent year of 1944, the German Luftwaffe faced mounting hardships that undermined its operational effectiveness. Pilots often flew into combat with inadequate preparation, their training hours curtailed by a persistent shortage of fuel that plagued the German war effort. Many experienced aviators, who had previously accumulated significant combat expertise and insight into defeating aircraft like the legendary P-51 Mustang, were progressively lost amidst the relentless attrition of aerial warfare. As a consequence, newer pilots, though armed with some tactical knowledge, lacked the extensive combat experience required to adapt swiftly to the rapidly evolving aerial battlefield. Meanwhile, aircraft production efforts, although surprisingly sustained despite the relentless Allied strategic bombing campaigns targeting German factories and assembly lines, were unable to compensate for the mounting losses inflicted upon the Luftwaffe's fleet. The manufacturing capacity, strained and increasingly compromised, struggled to replace aircraft and pilots at a pace swift enough to preserve the operational strength of German air forces. The intelligence gleaned from the captured aircraft demonstrations contributed to a nuanced understanding of the enemy's tactics and technological advancements. However, these revelations, while useful, could not overturn the overarching strategic disadvantages faced by Germany at this stage of the war. The combat readiness of German pilots remained chronically compromised, and the limited quality of training, further hampered by shortages of resources, meant that futuristic notions of tactical superiority were frequently undermined in the brutal reality of aerial combat. In this context, the once promising program of examining captured enemy aircraft emerged as a limited, albeit valuable, aid in the ongoing struggle to maintain air superiority. It offered a glimpse into the innovations and strengths of Allied fighters, guiding the German pilots' tactical preparations. Yet, despite this infusion of intelligence, the German war machine found itself increasingly vulnerable, outmatched in both numbers and technology, as the relentless pressure from Allied forces intensified across all theaters of the conflict. By late 1944, it was apparent that the initial hope of gaining decisive advantage through this program was waning. The combination of logistics difficulties, severe pilot shortages, and the overwhelming strength of the Allies' industrial and military efforts rendered the German fighters progressively vulnerable and less capable of altering the war's outcome. The demonstrations of captured aircraft, although an insightful exercise, ultimately belonged to a broader pattern of the Luftwaffe's decline, a poignant illustration of how even the most diligent efforts could not reverse the sweeping tide of defeat that was engulfing Germany's aerial forces. The realization among German pilots deepened into a sense of demoralization rather than inspiration as they fully appreciated the extent of their disadvantages in aerial combat. It became increasingly clear to them that they were operating with aircraft that were either outright inferior or, at best, significantly lacking in the critical performance attributes necessary for their designated missions. The formidable capabilities of the American P-51 Mustang, in terms of speed, exceptional range, and outstanding high-altitude performance, outstripped any German fighter aircraft then in active service. No German plane at that point could match the Mustang's combination of rapid ascent, extended operational reach, and efficiency at altitudes where strategic bombing and reconnaissance missions often took place. Furthermore, the intelligence gained from examining captured Mustangs extended far beyond simple flight tests or combat evaluations. German aircraft engineers based at Rechlin and Göttingen undertook a systematic and meticulous dissection of the P-51's components, seeking to understand the very foundations of American manufacturing prowess. They carefully analyzed the internal structures and aerodynamic features of the wings, paying close attention to the airfoil sections and construction techniques, striving to comprehend how American designers managed to produce such aerodynamically efficient and high-performing aircraft. Particularly revealing was their detailed examination of the Packard Merlin V16503 engine. They studied its complex two-stage supercharger system, equipped with an intercooler, which was responsible for enabling such exceptional high-altitude performance. Each aspect of the engine's engineering was scrutinized in hopes of adapting or replicating its capabilities. The aircraft's fuel system also attracted thorough analysis, as engineers sought to understand how the Americans achieved such remarkable ranges. Additionally, hydraulic systems were carefully evaluated for their reliability and their relative ease of maintenance in comparison with German standards. Throughout their investigations, German experts repeatedly noted the consistently high quality of materials used throughout the Mustang, including precisely manufactured components and durable alloys. American access to advanced strategic materials played a crucial role in enabling such technological superiority. The ability to source high-grade aluminum alloys, specialized steels, and reliable rubber compounds allowed American engineers to design and construct aircraft that combined strength and lightweight qualities effectively. In contrast, Germany faced severe shortages of these materials by 1944, which compelled them to rely on substitute materials that frequently proved inferior in terms of strength, durability, or manufacturability. These shortages impacted the quality, reliability, and longevity of German aircraft production as the war progressed. The investigation of the captured Mustang revealed the utilization of sophisticated manufacturing techniques that facilitated large-scale production without substantial compromises to quality standards. American factories employed highly developed assembly line processes, which resulted in aircraft with remarkably consistent quality and tight tolerances across thousands of units built. This mass production approach enabled the United States to produce aircraft quickly, reliably, and in large numbers. In stark contrast, German aircraft production increasingly relied on dispersed manufacturing methods, with assembly taking place in smaller, scattered facilities scattered around the country. To avoid the impacts of relentless Allied bombing campaigns, production had to be decentralized, often utilizing inadequately trained forced labor forces. This resulted in inconsistent quality control, reduced manufacturing efficiency, and mounting maintenance issues for the aircraft already in service. One such aircraft, a captured Mustang designated T9+HK, was flown until December 10 of the year November 1944, when both the aircraft and its pilot, Oberleutnant Liebschens, were lost. Historical records do not conclusively specify whether this Mustang aircraft was lost due to a crash during a demonstration flight or whether it was deliberately destroyed, but the end result was the aircraft's disappearance from service, leaving subsequent inquiries unanswered. During the course of their operations, some of the American P-51 Mustangs met their end in various ways. Either they were lost during fierce combat, brought down during rapid and brutal aerial engagements, or simply succumbed to the harsh realities of wartime circumstances such as mechanical failure or being shot down by enemy fire. Many of these aircraft, by the time they entered their second active service life, had traversed extensive stretches of German territory, visiting a multitude of Luftwaffe bases scattered across the Third Reich. Their presence on these bases served a dual purpose. Not only were they targets for Allied bombing raids, but they also became invaluable training tools. These captured aircraft provided German pilots and maintenance crews with the rare opportunity to observe American technology firsthand, acquiring practical, tangible knowledge of the capabilities, strengths, and weaknesses of the American fighters through direct experience and inspection. Furthermore, other captured P-51 Mustangs found a role that went beyond mere observation. They became integral in evaluations and demonstrations designed to scrutinize and understand the American aircraft better. This evaluation process was orchestrated by the Luftwaffe, which sought to gather as much intelligence as possible. After the war, extensive research and analysis of wartime German records revealed that at least 2 Mustangs were definitively operated under the directive of the Wonder Zirkus Rosarius, a group tasked with the testing and exploitation of captured enemy aircraft. during the pivotal months of 1944 and early 1945. These aircraft bore the Luftwaffe codes T9+CK and T9+HK, signifying their roles within specific operational or evaluation units. It is interesting to note that some historical accounts, on occasion, misrepresent or incorrectly identify additional P-51 Mustangs associated with the Wolf Rosarius operations. For instance, sources may erroneously list aircraft bearing the codes T9+FK and T9+PK as additional Mustangs operated by this unit. However, meticulous archival research and cross-referenced documentation clarify that these designations referred to different aircraft. T9+FK was in fact a captured Republic P-47D Thunderbolt, a heavy fighter aircraft similar in role but distinctly different in design from the Mustang, while T9+PK was a captured Soviet Lavochkin La-5FN fighter, indicating the wide range of aircraft the Germans had obtained through capture. The designation prefix, T9, itself was not part of any official Luftwaffe organizational coding, nor did it appear in standard organizational charts, strongly implying that it was an ad hoc designation, used specifically to identify aircraft associated with Wanderer Rosarius captured aircraft operations. This informal codename likely arose out of necessity, reflecting the improvisational nature of the Germans' handling and testing of foreign aircraft rather than adherence to formal organizational protocols. In addition to the evaluation of the American Mustang, German military documentation confirms that at least one captured P-51B model was actively utilized at the Neuropen airfield, situated roughly 60 kilometers northwest of Berlin. This particular aircraft was employed as a training platform for Hungarian fighter pilots, a vital step in the development of tactics suitable for countering American Mustangs, aircraft increasingly regarded as a formidable threat on the battlefield. The Germans recognized that effective countermeasures required more than just theoretical knowledge. They needed to educate their pilots on tactics that exploited the aircraft's weaknesses, while also respecting and countering its strengths. This tactical training focused intensively on recognizing and exploiting the niches in which Hungarian and German fighters retained slight advantages. For example, skilled pilot instructors emphasized sustained turn performance at lower speeds and at lower altitudes, areas where the Mustang's overwhelming speed and climb ability were less dominant. Training crews to avoid situations that would engage the Mustang's high-speed, high-altitude advantages was a core component of this effort, aiming to level the playing field as much as possible. The implications of German pilots gaining direct, hands-on experience with the American fighters extended far beyond immediate tactical adjustments. Discoveries made through these operations starkly demonstrated that the Mustang was not just a skilled or lucky aircraft. It was a tangible, absolute proof that American industrial and technological prowess matched, if not exceeded, German accomplishments in key aerospace and engineering fields. For years, propaganda efforts in Nazi Germany had sought to portray American industry as inferior, backward, or incapable of matching German genius. However, the undeniable capabilities of the Mustang shattered that illusion, forcing a reassessment of the perceived technological gap. This realization was significant because it challenged deeply ingrained beliefs about national superiority and resistance to innovation. Moreover, it played a role in demoralizing German pilots and military strategists alike, who began to understand, beyond any real doubt, that their adversaries possessed airpower equal to or exceeding their own in key performance areas. This undercut the morale of German fighter pilots, who now fought against an opponent emblematic of American industrial capacity, ingenuity, and technological advancement. Despite the skill, bravery, and tactical ingenuity of German pilots, they faced an aircraft whose range capabilities symbolized a strategic threat that could not be easily countered. In particular, the Mustangs extended the strategic landscape of aerial warfare over Germany underwent a profound transformation, marking the shift from a potentially manageable conflict to an overwhelmingly decisive one. Initially, the German Luftwaffe had some chance of defending their homeland, largely because Allied bombing raids were hindered by limited escort range. Allied aircraft, such as early variants of the P-51 Mustang, could not accompany the bombers all the way to their targets and often had to peel off before reaching deep into German airspace, leaving the bombers vulnerable to interception. However, this situation changed dramatically once the newer models of the Mustang were deployed, equipped with long-range fuel tanks and more efficient engine setups, allowing them to accompany bombing missions from takeoff to landing without interruption. The advent of continuous fighter escort fundamentally altered the dynamics of aerial combat. German fighters found it increasingly difficult to intercept and attack bomber formations because they could no longer exploit the limited duration of Allied escort coverage. Consequently, German pilots faced a far greater danger when attempting attacks on well-guarded formations, as they had to penetrate multiple layers of sustained Allied fighter escort, often superior in numbers, tactics, and aircraft quality. The change meant that every bombing run now became a perilous operation for German interceptors, not a fleeting chance to strike amid confusion, but a hazardous engagement against a well-protected formation maintained throughout the entire mission. Behind these tactical shifts lay a stark disparity in industrial capacity and production prowess between the Allies and Germany, revealing what was ultimately a decisive technological and material advantage. By late 1944, American manufacturing plants were churning out around 500 P-51 Mustangs every month. This rate continued to grow rapidly, reaching approximately 881 aircraft per month by the height of production in January of the following year. Such figures betrayed the truth about the industrial capacity of the United States, which was able to produce vastly more combat aircraft compared to their German counterparts. When comparing production totals, the numbers told a grim story for Germany. The American output of the Mustang alone more than doubled the cumulative annual production of all German single-engine fighters combined, including iconic aircraft such as the Messerschmitt Bf 109 and the Focke-Wulf Fw 190, along with the newer models introduced later in the war. Moreover, these American-built fighters were equipped with engines known for their reliability, mass-produced with consistent quality standards, providing pilots with dependable power plants during critical missions. Their sophisticated, accurate instruments enhanced a pilot's situational awareness, and the radio systems installed in their aircraft consistently functioned, unlike many of the late-war German fighters, which often suffered from unreliable or poorly integrated electronics. The Americans benefited not only from superior equipment but also from meticulous maintenance and logistical support. Ground crews, well-trained and supplied with genuine spare parts, dedicated tools, and detailed technical manuals, kept their aircraft in prime condition. The contrast was stark with the German forces, who increasingly struggled with maintenance issues caused by shortages of critical parts, substitutions with inferior materials, the reliance on undertrained or forced labor personnel, and a fragmented infrastructure that made routine repairs difficult and slow. As a result, American aircraft and ground personnel maintained a level of operational readiness that German units found impossible to sustain as the war dragged on. Similarly, the caliber of pilot training played a critical role in these aerial encounters. American pilots typically arrived at operational units after having accumulated between 200 and 400 hours of flying experience. This extensive training included not only basic pilot skills but also advanced combat tactics, navigation, formation flying, and instrument flying in diverse weather conditions, preparing them thoroughly for the challenges of combat. The comprehensive nature of their training fostered confidence and tactical mastery. In stark contrast, German pilot training had undergone a dangerous decline by late 1944. Fuel shortages and the loss of training facilities and seasoned instructors meant that new German pilots often arrived at the front lines with drastically reduced flying hours, sometimes as few as 100, and very limited or no instruction in instrument flying. Many of these pilots lacked the necessary combat experience and were dangerously unprepared for the realities they faced, often thrust into engagements against American pilots flying aircraft that had been carefully maintained and technologically superior. This mismatch in pilot readiness and aircraft quality contributed to a sharp increase in German losses during this period, with statistics revealing a tragic and unsustainable rise in German fighter pilot casualty rates throughout the year. Veteran German pilots, despite their experience, found themselves increasingly outmatched as the war progressed. Their knowledge of how to exploit the strengths of their aircraft and tactics waned in the face of the relentless American technological edge. The combination of tactical inexperience among new pilots, equipment failures, and the relentless pressure of superior American fighters created a lethal environment for German aircrews, leading to a steady deterioration in their survivability and operational effectiveness. The cumulative impact of these factors was clear. As the war advanced into 2044 and into early 2045, the German fighter force was experiencing devastating attrition, unable to replenish its ranks with adequately trained personnel or effective aircraft, ultimately sealing the fate of their defensive during the intense period of aerial combat in the final years of World War II. The precise rate at which losses accumulated among new, poorly trained pilots was alarming. Even under the most compressed and often inadequate training programs available at the time, the speed at which these novice pilots were either killed or seriously wounded vastly outstripped the rate at which new recruits could be prepared to replace them. With training efforts struggling to keep pace with the relentless attrition, a tragic reality unfolded. Rookies who had barely completed their rudimentary preparation typically survived only a handful of missions before they faced imminent danger, either being shot down, resulting in a forced bailout if luck was on their side, or perishing if misfortune struck sooner. This inexorable loss drained the Luftwaffe of its most crucial and irreplaceable resource: its seasoned, capable pilots equipped with the experience, good judgment, and situational awareness that are vital for survival and combat effectiveness. The attrition was so severe that the war machine faced a disheartening and potentially fatal depletion of its critical human capital, with each loss further weakening its ability to mount effective air operations. Amidst these harsh realities, the Germans conducted the Wonder Zirkus Rosarius demonstrations, which played a significant role in vividly exposing these critical shortcomings to their pilots before they directly encountered similar situations in actual combat, where every decision could mean life or death. These demonstrations offered a form of advanced, albeit harsh, preparation by providing realistic insights and technical understanding of what pilots would face in combat scenarios. While the theory behind these sessions suggested that such realistic exposure might improve survival prospects by preparing pilots for the grim realities of aerial combat, it simultaneously underscored the increasingly dire situation faced by German military aviation. It became painfully evident that, across all facets of the aerial war, performance, tactics, and strategic deployment, the German forces were gradually losing their advantage. Pilots who had the opportunity to fly captured American P-51 Mustangs or observe them perform in demonstration flights quickly realized with an uncomfortable clarity that their enemies possessed significant and fundamental performance advantages in the areas that mattered most for survival and mission success. These advantages included superior speed, longer range, remarkable high-altitude performance, and larger quantities of aircraft available for combat. The acquisition and demonstration of these aircraft made it abundantly clear that the Allied air forces enjoyed a strategic edge that was nearly impossible for Germany to counter. This knowledge brought little tactical value when it came to individual combat but inflicted substantial psychological pressure on German pilots. As the Luftwaffe's losses mounted toward the end of 1944 and into early 1945, no amount of strategic denial could obscure the harsh reality. They faced an adversary with equipment that offered a profound performance advantage, exacerbating the feelings of helplessness and diminishing morale among their ranks. Nevertheless, amidst the increasing awareness of inferiority, German test pilots who had the rare opportunity to extensively evaluate captured P-51 Mustangs through multiple test flights and simulated combat engagements developed a begrudging yet genuine professional respect for American engineering ingenuity and design philosophy. Despite being adversaries, these German engineers and pilots couldn't help but recognize that the Mustang embodied a coherent, well-integrated aircraft design that exemplified purpose-driven engineering. Through direct experience, they appreciated that the aircraft did not merely chase raw performance figures, but rather skillfully balanced multiple characteristics: speed, endurance, high-altitude capacity, to fulfill its primary strategic role as a long-range bomber escort. This aircraft deliberately sacrificed some attributes, such as sustained turn performance or dogfighting agility, which might have been optimized for close-range aerial combat, so as to prioritize crucial qualities like speed, extraordinary range, and unmatched high-altitude capabilities. These features were vital for the Mustang's primary mission: escorting bombers deep into enemy territory, across hostile skies, and maintaining fight capability during extended operations. Such targeted trade-offs in design reflected a highly disciplined engineering judgment, one that consciously chose appropriate compromises aligned with real operational demands rather than pursuing theoretical maximums of performance that might have been irrelevant in actual combat scenarios. Furthermore, the technical design choices made for the Mustang underscored a highly effective approach to manufacturing. The aircraft's ease of production left a strong impression on German engineers, who, through their own extensive experiences within the German aviation industry, understood the many challenges associated with mass manufacturing complex aircraft. The Mustang's construction was deliberately modular, allowing assembly lines to work in parallel rather than sequentially, significantly speeding up the production process. Its standardized components reduced complexity, which in turn lowered training requirements for ingenuity in assembly and maintenance. Multiple features were intentionally engineered to simplify manufacturing tasks, making it possible for large quantities of aircraft to be produced rapidly and efficiently, an aspect that resonated strongly with the Germans' own manufacturing philosophies and highlighted an essential strategic advantage for the Allies. In the realm of aircraft manufacturing, some factories were able to produce Mustangs in large volumes while consistently maintaining a high standard of quality, largely because the fundamental design of the aircraft itself was created with mass production in mind from the very beginning. This deliberate approach to designing the Mustang made it easier to produce on an extensive scale without sacrificing its performance standards. Rather than viewing manufacturing processes as an afterthought or an inconvenient obstacle, the designers prioritized creation of an aircraft that balanced performance and producibility seamlessly. a factor that proved vital during wartime when rapid, reliable production was essential. In contrast, the approach taken by many German aircraft designers often emphasized peak performance above all else, sometimes at the expense of ease and efficiency in manufacturing. This meant that their aircraft, while potentially capable of superior performance in certain aspects, were often more complex and time-consuming to produce. These designs commonly resulted in aircraft that were difficult to manufacture, especially in the difficult conditions of late World War II Germany. The deteriorating wartime environment, marked by resource shortages, strategic bombing raids, and industrial decline, further exacerbated these challenges, making the production of cutting-edge aircraft a complex and often painfully slow process. An example of American industrial capability that set their aircraft apart is exemplified by the Packard V1650-3 Merlin engine, which powered not only Framasier's early P-51B Mustangs but also countless other early models as well. The development and production of this engine represented a significant technological and industrial achievement. The Packard Company managed to license the production of the renowned Rolls-Royce Merlin engines right in the United States, and despite the inherent complexity of the engine's design, they were able to manufacture thousands of units with an astonishing level of consistency in quality. This achievement was critical because it ensured that American fighters like the Mustang benefited from highly reliable and uniform power plants, an essential factor in combat effectiveness. Furthermore, the Merlin engine's design included a sophisticated two-stage supercharger combined with an intercooler system, which allowed for outstanding high-altitude performance and sustained flight capabilities. This technological advantage enabled American fighters to operate effectively at altitudes that German inline engines simply could not match. While German inline engines such as the Daimler-Benz DB605 were capable and had served well initially, by 1944 they faced increasing problems related to quality and reliability. The difficulties stemmed partly from severe shortages of materials, which forced the Germans to substitute inferior substances and disperse production facilities across a wider area, measures that inadvertently undermined quality control. Consequently, Merlin-powered Mustangs could consistently sustain high performance, whereas the German alternatives suffered from declining reliability and higher maintenance demands over time. The psychological impact of these technological disparities was profound for German pilots. Soldiers who had entered the conflict with confidence, rooted in their rigorous training, the perceived superiority of their aircraft, and well-established tactics, began to experience growing doubt and disillusionment. This shift was driven by direct combat experience and the sobering sight of captured Allied aircraft, particularly through intelligence programs like the Wonder Zirkus Rosarius, which examined downed enemy planes. By the latter part of 1944, this accumulated experience had systematically eroded German pilots' morale and belief in victory. Many recognized, with painful clarity, that they were fighting against adversaries with clear and decisive technological, numerical, and logistical advantages. They faced opponents equipped with superior aircraft performance, the Mustang's ability to operate at higher altitudes, greater speed, and better maneuverability, alongside overwhelming numbers, more advanced logistical support systems, and superior intelligence capabilities. Under these conditions, engaging in combat required extraordinary courage, so much so that it often bordered on resignation to potential death or severe injury. German pilots frequently recounted in post-war interviews and personal accounts the sense of hopelessness when American fighter formations appeared on the horizon. They understood that any attempt to evade these formations was virtually futile. Tactical maneuvers offered little hope of escape, nor could they outrun the faster and more agile Mustangs in service. German pilots were acutely aware that engaging the Allied fighters at high altitude meant facing near insurmountable disadvantages in the most critical performance categories. Choosing not to engage, and thus allowing the American bombers to continue unopposed, meant accelerating the collapse of Germany's military and industrial capacity, a consequence too severe to accept. Yet, no side was able to find a satisfactory alternative, and both options left the defending pilots with a sense of inevitable defeat. This lamentable reality underscored the asymmetry of resources, technological development, and strategic advantages that had become increasingly decisive in the air war over Europe. During the final desperate year of World War II, German fighter pilots were often faced with agonizing choices, almost no matter what situation they encountered. Their options were painfully limited. They could either engage the increasingly superior Allied air forces or attempt to withdraw and preserve their remaining aircraft for future use. Yet both choices led to the inevitable decline of the Luftwaffe's effectiveness. Despite these grim circumstances, the German military continued to operate certain experimental units, such as the Wonder Zirkus Rosarius, into early 1945. This unit specialized in testing and demonstrating the capabilities of captured aircraft, often showcasing captured American fighters like the P-51 Mustang, an aircraft that had become a symbol of Allied airpower. The unit's efforts persisted as long as there was some residual aviation fuel, and as long as their operational airfields remained usable amidst the relentless advance of Allied ground forces approaching from both the eastern and western fronts. These demonstrations served multiple purposes: gathering intelligence on the performance of enemy aircraft, informing German pilots about the strengths and weaknesses of captured fighters, and attempting to exploit gaps in Allied air tactics. However, as the Allies pushed deeper into German territory, the chances for these units to operate safely and effectively dwindled rapidly. The security and integrity of their landing strips, along with the safe transit of aircraft and personnel, became increasingly compromised. Eventually, the entire program was forced to shut down, unable to continue amid the chaos and collapse that engulfed the German military machine in those final months. The destruction of German infrastructure, combined with the loss of logistical support, meant that even specialized units like test and evaluation groups could no longer function. This collapse extended to the remnants of their aircraft holdings, including various P-51 Mustangs that had fallen into German hands. Facts about what ultimately happened to these captured aircraft remain uncertain in many circumstances because of the incomplete and often chaotic records retained during this period. Some of these captured planes were undoubtedly destroyed in the heat of final Allied air raids on German airfields, raids which grew in frequency and intensity during the year 1945. Other aircraft were likely deliberately destroyed by retreating German forces. Losses mandated to prevent their falling into enemy hands and being reused or studied by the Allies. There are also reports suggesting that a few of these aircraft may have survived the war and were recovered later by Allied forces streaming into Germany in the overlapping period. Yet, detailed records of such recoveries are scarce or have been lost to time, leaving many questions unanswered about their ultimate disposition. The systematic testing of captured P-51 Mustangs provided invaluable insights for the Germans. These tests revealed the Mustang's capabilities, such as its remarkable speed, climbing ability, and long-range endurance. By studying these aircraft, German pilots and engineers gained a better understanding of optimal engagement procedures, as well as identifying exploitable weaknesses they could target in future defensive tactics. Despite this wealth of tactical intelligence, such knowledge proved to be of limited practical value by the year 1944, when the fundamental disadvantages faced by the Luftwaffe became overwhelmingly apparent. Even though German pilots knew, in theory, that the Mustang excelled in outrunning, outclimbing, and having a significantly longer operational range, this knowledge offered little comfort or strategic advantage when facing the realities of wartime combat. These pilots were still compelled, by direct orders, to engage these superior aircraft over their homeland, a task that was increasingly hopeless as the Allies dominated the skies. The German testing program had been a sophisticated, systematic effort to develop tactical countermeasures and enhance the tactical knowledge of their pilots. However, such endeavors could not compensate for the glaring deficiencies in aircraft performance, the numerical inferiority of their remaining forces, or the chronic shortages of fuel, spare parts, and skilled maintenance crews. One of the most poignant stories from this period involves Lieutenant Thomas Fraser, flying a P-51 called the B-15NA, serial number 4,324,825. Following a forced landing on D-Day amidst the chaos of invasion, the wreckage of Fraser's Mustang lay abandoned in a French field, seemingly reduced to a piece of battlefield debris. Yet, rather than ending as a silent casualty of war, the wreckage became a potent symbol that conveyed far more than any propaganda could. It became a tangible, unmistakable demonstration of American aerospace engineering prowess, a stark reminder to German pilots and engineers alike that the Allies' air supremacy was real and durable. This wrecked aircraft ultimately served as a concrete showcase of the technological and engineering superiority of the American war effort, striking a hard blow to German beliefs about their own capabilities. Such displays of captured aircraft, these tangible symbols of Allied dominance, served as shocking revelations of a military disparity that no amount of propaganda could mask or mitigate. In the end, the remains of Fraser's Mustang underscored the stark technological and strategic realities of the final phase of the war, leaving an indelible impression on those German personnel who came face to face with this aircraft in its ruined state. The aircraft played a crucial role in education and training until its tragic loss in December of the year 1944. Throughout its operational life, it had traversed vast swaths of German territory, offering invaluable, hands-on experience and providing a stark, realistic appraisal of enemy capabilities to hundreds of Luftwaffe personnel. Its presence served as a stark reminder of both technological progress and the formidable challenges faced by the opposing forces during a turbulent period of the war. The narrative concerning the captured Mustangs in German service vividly illustrates the meticulous and highly professional approach taken by the Luftwaffe to gain insights into the capabilities of their adversaries' aircraft. Even as Germany's strategic position continued to deteriorate and the war drew closer to its inevitable conclusion, the German military remained committed to understanding their enemy through systematic research. Instead of simply relying on fragmentary combat reports or tentative intelligence assessments, which were often plagued by uncertainty, German forces dedicated significant and often scarce resources to a comprehensive program. This involved recovering, repairing, and flying captured Allied aircraft under controlled and carefully monitored conditions, methods that reflected a very advanced and disciplined approach to tactical intelligence gathering. Such a structured methodology to understanding aerial combat abilities exemplified the best practices in military intelligence operations of that era, where the goal was always an accurate and detailed assessment of the opponent's strengths and weaknesses. Notably, this approach persisted regardless of the increasingly dire strategic circumstances Germany faced, highlighting the unwavering importance placed on tactical insight as a means of gaining a competitive edge. The Wonder Zirkus Rosarius program, in particular, demonstrated that even extensive intelligence efforts, marked by high levels of professionalism and systematic analysis, could not entirely overcome the fundamental material deficiencies and strategic disadvantages that Germany endured during the war's final years. Pilots flying these captured Mustangs amassed a wealth of knowledge about the aircraft's unique characteristics, handling qualities, and optimum tactics. Yet, in most cases, this hard-won insight simply confirmed what many already suspected: that Allied aircraft, exemplified by the Mustang, possessed inherent performance advantages that German industry and engineering capabilities could not match during those last, resource-strapped years of the conflict. This understanding underscored the profound technological gap that the Allies had managed to establish between their aircraft and those of the Axis powers, despite the Germans' earlier confidence in their own technological superiority. This experience mirrors the broader narrative of the German military throughout the latter stages of World War II across all theaters and branches of service. Initial optimism in their innovative tactics and technological edge gradually faded as the realities of war became starkly evident, namely, that the Allies had secured decisive advantages in several critical domains. The sheer industrial capacity of the United States, combined with ready access to vital strategic resources, enormous manpower reserves, and increasingly sophisticated technological developments, made the Allied forces formidable opponents. The Mustang, as a prime example, embodied these underlying Allied advantages. Its superiority was vividly apparent in the aircraft's design, performance, and strategic purpose. Designed to excel as a long-range escort fighter, the P-51 Mustang became a symbol of American industrial ingenuity and strategic planning. Its production was staggering in volume, with large quantities built in factories operating at high-quality standards, despite the complexities inherent in its design. American pilot training was rigorous and comprehensive, ensuring that those behind the controls could exploit every aspect of the aircraft's performance capabilities during combat. Meanwhile, German forces carefully studied, analyzed, and even admired these technological and tactical advantages through dedicated programs like the Wonder Zirkus Rosarius, yet found themselves unable to replicate or neutralize them due to the severe strategic and material limitations they faced. The technical sophistication of the Mustang, particularly its engine and aerodynamic design, posed a formidable challenge to German engineers and pilots alike. It was a testament to the advanced state of American aeronautical engineering at the time and demonstrated the profound separation between Allied and Axis technological development in the aviation field. Despite their active efforts to understand and adapt, German authorities recognized that catching up or effectively countering the Mustang's capabilities was beyond their reach within the constraints of war-torn Germany's dwindling resources and industrial capacity. Ultimately, the story of the Mustang in German service encapsulates a broader reality: that technological superiority, when combined with industrial capacity and well-organized training, could decisively influence the outcome of aerial combat during the later years of the conflict. The aircraft's design and operational success underscored the emerging American dominance in aviation technology, a dominance rooted in innovation, mass production, and strategic resource allocation that the Germans, despite their efforts, could only observe and aspire to imitate from afar. The victory of the North American P-51 Mustang over the formidable German aerial defenses during World War II fundamentally challenged and ultimately dismantled long-held assumptions that many Americans had been led to believe about their nation's engineering prowess. For a considerable period, propaganda meticulously cultivated the narrative that while Americans were adept at producing simple, durable, and mass-producible equipment, they lacked the capacity for true technological sophistication or engineering excellence in more complex designs. These ingrained beliefs painted a picture of American manufacturing as pragmatic but fundamentally unspectacular when it came to the finer nuances of aeronautical innovation and high-performance engineering. However, the introduction and deployment of the Mustang served as a stark, undeniable rebuttal to these misconceptions. The aircraft proved conclusively that American engineers possessed the skill, ingenuity, and technical mastery to develop highly refined, aerodynamically advanced, and aerodynamically efficient fighter planes that could match or even surpass the capabilities of their German counterparts in terms of performance, durability, and operational effectiveness. Its wing design alone exemplified a leap forward in aerodynamic research, incorporating concepts that had been carefully developed and then successfully integrated into large-scale production, an impressive feat that underscored the maturity and competitiveness of American engineering in a global context. Further evidence of America's expanding technological credentials was exemplified by the performance of the Packard Merlin engine, designated the FE 1650-3. This engine, renowned for its high-performance specifications, illustrated the American ability not merely to produce complex machinery but to manufacture these sophisticated engines at an enormous scale without sacrificing quality or reliability. The integration of this engine into the aircraft reflected a level of engineering sophistication that expertly balanced competing requirements such as power output, weight, fuel efficiency, and system reliability, demonstrating a comprehensive, holistic approach to military aircraft design that prioritized both individual component excellence and systemic harmony. German pilots, who had extensive opportunity to fly and evaluate the Mustang during missions over Europe, found themselves unable to dismiss American engineering achievements as crude or inferior. Their first-hand experience revealed an aircraft that offered superior handling across the entire flight envelope, delivered exceptional performance in the critical strategic mission profile of long-range escort, and incorporated thoughtful, carefully considered design features throughout every aspect of its systems. The aircraft's ability to perform superbly during demanding operational contexts left little room for dismissal rooted solely in propaganda narratives. This second-hand and direct knowledge forced even the most skeptical German pilots and strategic planners to admit that American technological capabilities significantly exceeded many of their prior assumptions. The implications of this realization went far beyond aircraft design, touching upon broader themes of industrial competence, technical education, and overall engineering sophistication within the United States. It demonstrated that American industry was capable of high-level innovation and mass production of complex, high-performance military hardware, reshaping perceptions of the global balance of technological power. The strategic significance of the Mustang ultimately lay in its unique combination of capabilities, which other contemporary aircraft could neither match nor replicate. Prior to the Mustang's inclusion in the Allied fleet, long-range bombing missions deep into German territory were plagued by a persistent and critical weakness: the inability of escort fighters to maintain continuous protection for heavy bombers over extended distances. The existing escorts, such as the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt and the Lockheed P-38 Lightning, despite their notable strengths in other areas like speed and durability, simply did not possess enough fuel endurance to accompany the bombers all the way to and from targets located deep within Germany, especially on multi-hour missions originating from bases in England. This inherent limitation meant that bomber formations frequently found themselves vulnerable during the most perilous parts of their missions, when German fighters could exploit the escort's fuel exhaustion to mount attacks, forcing the Allies into a premature withdrawal or suspension of deep penetration raids. Consequently, the relentless losses and limited operational reach made strategic bombing campaigns less effective and more costly. The arrival of the P-51 Mustang in significant numbers during early 1944 revolutionized these operations. Its remarkable long-range escort capability allowed fighters to remain with the bombers throughout the entire mission, offering uninterrupted protection from takeoff all the way to the return home, irrespective of the target's distance. This capability essentially eliminated the period during which bombers were vulnerable to German fighters, rendering the previously insurmountable threat manageable and significantly reducing Allied aircraft losses. German fighters, who had previously timed their attacks to coincide with moments when escorted bombers were most exposed, waiting for fuel-starved fighters to turn home, found their advantage diminished. With the Mustang's extended range, the Germans could not find a window to strike without encountering effective, continuous Allied fighter coverage. As a result, the combat environment shifted dramatically, making deep interdiction raids far more feasible and sustainable. The operational impact was profound. The strategic bombing campaign, which had been stymied by escort limitations, gained a new level of effectiveness. The Mustang's breakthrough meant that Allied air forces could conduct sustained deep strikes into German territory, targeting industrial centers, transportation hubs, and military installations with newfound confidence. It preserved the integrity of bomber formations, reduced aircraft losses, and ultimately contributed significantly to crippling during the tumultuous years of the Second World War. The Luftwaffe faced a significant shift in aerial combat tactics as the Allies gained momentum. To augment their effectiveness, German pilots were instructed to engage with American fighter aircraft directly rather than solely focusing on attacking strategic bombers. This change fundamentally heightened the dangers faced by German pilots on every interception mission, as dogfights with well-armed and often superior Allied fighters intensified the risks involved. This intensified engagement occurred in the broader context of an evolving aerial battlefield in which the Allies' numerical advantage continued to grow. As Allied forces increased their air presence, the quality of German pilots began to decline, a consequence partly stemming from truncated training periods that could no longer adequately prepare pilots for the increasingly complex and demanding air combat environments. These factors collectively eroded the Luftwaffe's effectiveness in intercepting Allied bombing raids, creating a substantial operational challenge. Meanwhile, the introduction of highly capable escort fighters such as the P-51 Mustang played a crucial role in stabilizing bomber operations over enemy territory. The Mustang's presence made it feasible for Allied air forces to sustain their strategic bombings over Germany for longer periods, thereby maintaining pressure on German industrial and military targets. In response to the shifting aerial landscape, the Germans embarked on a comprehensive and meticulous process of technical analysis involving the captured P-51 Mustangs, examining these aircraft across a range of advanced testing facilities. These evaluations were conducted at multiple locations, with Göttingen serving as a central hub where German engineers undertook some of the most detailed performance assessments. During these rigorous tests, a spectrum of parameters was systematically measured, including various speeds at different altitudes, climb rates throughout the entire operational range, and the maximum altitude achievable under diverse configurations. Handling qualities and performance across the airplane's complete envelope were also scrutinized under carefully controlled circumstances, ensuring accurate and comparable results. The outcome of these tests was a series of exhaustive technical reports. These documents recorded every significant finding and included direct comparisons between the P-51 Mustang's performance and that of contemporary German fighters, analyzed under similar conditions to ensure fairness and precision. The engineers paid particular attention to characterizing the unique design features that contributed to the Mustang's impressive capabilities. They closely examined elements such as the aerodynamic efficiency of the wing structure, the formidable power supplied by the two-stage supercharged engine, the aircraft's substantial internal fuel tanks supplemented by external drop tanks, and the integration of complex systems that enhanced overall performance. These detailed evaluations highlighted how each component of the aircraft supported its exceptional operational qualities. The reports circulated extensively within German aviation circles, serving as vital intelligence tools. They informed aircraft designers about the cutting-edge technological approaches employed by the Allies, offering insights into the design principles that granted the Mustang its significant advantages. Tactical planners also relied heavily on this data to inform their operational strategies, enabling more accurate forecasting of Allied capabilities during strategic and tactical planning. At the operational level, commanders adapted their tactics based on the realistic assessments provided by these reports, better understanding the Mustang's strengths and weaknesses. Crucially, the technical findings resonated strongly with the practical experiences of combat pilots who had engaged the Mustang in the skies. Their reports echoed the technical data. The P-51 possessed considerable and decisive performance superiority in areas critical to the bomber escort mission. The systematic analysis confirmed that the Mustang's exceptional range and endurance enabled long-range escort essential for bomber formations deep within enemy-held territory. Its high-altitude performance was notably superior, primarily due to the efficiency of its two-stage supercharged engine, which allowed sustained high-speed flight at altitude, a vital feature during escort missions. The aircraft's maximum velocity, notably high when compared with contemporaries, provided tactical flexibility, allowing pilots to quickly adapt to changing combat scenarios. Its handling characteristics were characterized by a harmonious combination of stability and agility, reducing pilot workload and facilitating effective maneuvering during engagements. These qualities not only contributed to a higher survival rate but also enhanced combat effectiveness against German interceptors. Within their reports, the engineers documented specific design features that directly contributed to these outstanding capabilities. Among them, the wing's aerodynamic efficiency minimized drag and maximized lift, while the powerful, sophisticated supercharged engine enabled the aircraft to achieve and sustain remarkable speeds at various altitudes. The aircraft's generous internal fuel capacity, supplemented by external tanks, granted it a significant operational range, extending escort coverage over long distances. Additionally, the integration of advanced systems throughout the Mustang improved reliability and ease of operation, further enhancing its combat performance. The insights garnered from these technical analyses confirmed the ongoing need for improvements in German aircraft development. German engineers concluded that their existing fighter designs would require substantial upgrades to compete effectively with current Allied aircraft, let alone future iterations that would benefit from the technological advancements revealed during these assessments. In light of these findings, Germany launched several ambitious development programs in the year as it strove to regain parity. These programs aimed to produce more advanced fighters equipped with cutting-edge technology, such as more powerful engines, improved aerodynamics, and innovative armament systems, all intended to counter Allied air superiority and restore standing dominance in the skies. The Focke-Wulf FW190D, equipped with an inline engine designed to enhance its high-altitude flight performance, represented a significant evolutionary step within the German fighter fleet. Alongside it, the Focke-Achilles TAR-152 emerged as a specialized high-altitude fighter aircraft, tailored to operate effectively in the more demanding regions of the upper atmosphere. Moreover, during this period, various other revolutionary aircraft concepts were under development in Germany, many harnessing jet and rocket propulsion systems that promised to revolutionize aerial combat. These ambitious programs clearly reflected the perceptible recognition among German aeronautical engineers and military strategists that their existing fighters, such as the Messerschmitt Bf 109G series and the FW 190A, were increasingly ill-equipped to face the more advanced Allied aircraft developed in response. Specifically, the Americans' P-51 Mustang showcased superior performance, especially in terms of speed, range, and high-altitude capability, exposing critical deficiencies in German fighters that could no longer be remedied with incremental improvements alone. However, by this stage of the war, Germany was plagued by severe shortages of key materials, which hindered the timely production of these advanced aircraft designs. Industrial output was continually disrupted by relentless Allied bombing campaigns that targeted manufacturing hubs, transportation routes, and supply chains. In addition, resource constraints, worsening Allied strategic blockade, and the rapid deterioration of Germany's overall war effort prevented many of these breakthrough prototypes from progressing beyond the testing phases or from reaching sufficient operational numbers to make a decisive difference in the skies. Among the most notable developments was the Messerschmitt Me 262, the world's first operational jet-powered fighter aircraft that sought to surpass Allied piston-engined fighters through groundbreaking turbojet technology. The Me 262 held definitive advantages in terms of velocity and firepower, making it a lethal opponent for Allied bombers when flown by highly skilled pilots who knew how to exploit its speed and agility. Despite these formidable qualities, the aircraft faced persistent technical issues, particularly chronic reliability problems with its engines, which constrained its availability for combat missions. Furthermore, the operational deployment of the Me 262 necessitated expansive concrete runways, a vulnerability that made it susceptible to Allied attack, while its immense consumption of scarce aviation fuel placed additional strain on an already strained logistics network. By the time the aircraft entered service in limited numbers, the timing was proverbial. It arrived too late to sway the strategic tide of the conflict or appreciably challenge Allied air dominance in any meaningful way. Even its technological superiority was insufficient in the face of overwhelming Allied numerical superiority, coupled with the crumbling infrastructure of the German Luftwaffe, dwindling fuel supplies, and the declining quality of pilot training. As the final year of the European conflict dawned, the reduction in effective German air defense was unmistakable. The Luftwaffe rapidly weakened, losing its capacity to mount effective resistance against increasing Allied air assaults, driven by catastrophic pilot losses, fuel shortages, and logistical failures. The systematic decline of the German air campaign reached a point where, despite the valor and skill displayed by individual pilots, the overall effectiveness of their air defenses diminished steadily. The Wehrmacht's strategic situation was so dire that efforts concentrated on testing captured aircraft, like the P-51 Mustang, in an attempt to glean tactical insights and improve pilot survivability where possible. These testing programs persisted as long as practically feasible, even as the outcomes of the war became increasingly bleak and total defeat appeared inevitable. German pilots who had flown captured Mustangs and had gained a nuanced understanding of their capabilities faced the end of the conflict with feelings of complex emotions, recognition of the engineering marvels embodied by aircraft like the P-51 intimately contrasted with the bitter reality of defeat. While appreciating the technological achievements of the Allied fighters, many of these seasoned pilots also harbored a sense of mournful acceptance. They understood that Germany's defeat was total and unconditional, a result of overwhelming Allied material advantages across virtually all domains of military power. Having observed firsthand the vast disparities in resources, industrial capacity, and technological innovation that favored the Allies, the captured aircraft testing program served as a stark reminder of the formidable edge the Allied forces possessed. Despite the bravery and ingenuity displayed by the German pilots and engineers, the overmatch in numbers, quality, and logistical support was painfully evident, leaving no illusions about the ultimate outcome of the war. The testing program involving the classic P-51 Mustang stands as a captivating and instructive chapter in the broader narrative of aviation during World War II, exemplifying how disciplined and professional military organizations relentlessly sought to comprehend and ultimately counteract their opponents' advantages, even in the most desperate and challenging of circumstances. This program, through meticulous and systematic efforts, managed to extract tactically significant knowledge about the aircraft by enabling German pilots to gain first-hand experience with captured Mustangs. Such direct exposure allowed them to appreciate the distinct handling characteristics and performance traits of this formidable enemy aircraft vividly. However, despite the invaluable insights gained, this body of knowledge was ultimately insufficient to bridge the stark gaps in industrial capacity, technological development, resource availability, and the caliber of trained personnel that defined the wartime air combat environment of the years 1944 and 1945. The German forces, despite their courage, remarkable tactical dexterity, and professional competence, faced an uphill battle against opponents equipped with technological superiority, greater resource stocks, and more comprehensive training programs. Moreover, they operated from a strategic position that heavily favored the Allies, which proved decisive in the outcome of air campaigns. When German test pilots recognized that they had never encountered aircraft with handling characteristics akin to those of the Mustang, it served as a stark acknowledgement of American engineering prowess, an honest and professional recognition of the performance gulf that separated German aircraft from their Allied counterparts. Such revelations, based on direct experience rather than propaganda or second-hand intelligence reports, illuminated the uncomfortable reality that must sometimes be faced head-on. It is a poignant reminder that confronting unwelcome truths often requires personal involvement and direct observation, which cannot be dismissed through simplistic explanations rooted in wishful thinking or ideological bias. The legacy of initiatives like Wonder Zirkus Rosarius and similar programs extends far beyond their immediate tactical functions. They symbolize the enduring importance of thorough intelligence collection, technical expertise, and unwavering honesty in evaluating enemy capabilities. Even under the most challenging strategic conditions, these efforts demonstrated that rigorous and systematic technical assessments could reveal vulnerabilities and advantages critical for shaping military doctrine and operational decisions. Ultimately, such endeavors underscore the vital role of professional integrity and factual accuracy in advancing military understanding and preparedness, especially when facing the complex and dangerous realities of modern warfare.